Well, hey, Gundam Maniacs, welcome to the Gundam Explained Show. I'm your host, Adam Blue. Joining me is Stephen live from Anime NYC 2023. Wow, is this like a back in? I don't know what I'm getting at with that. But cool shirt.
Appreciate. Hey, shout out to Zeonic Shadow.
Exactly.
He sent it to me because, like, obviously I haven't been to Anime NYC in since at least 2017.
That's cool, man. I'm always wanted to check out more cons. Yeah, and I want to say here in the DFW area, I think this past weekend they had, I think they call it Fan Expo. The only reason I didn't go was because really it's just a place to get signatures.
Yeah.
I did. It wasn't like that. They had like, what do you call it? Like exhibitors, and it was more, which is cool. But I want to say I probably mistaken like the cast of Back to the Future and like some other things that would actually be pretty cool.
Yeah.
To go. Oh, even like the YouTuber Star Wars Theory.
Oh, was he out there?
Yeah, he was there,
That's
and,
pretty
and so
cool.
yeah, it would be kind of cool to. Like, I don't know if there is networking opportunity, like looking at it that way.
Oh,
Um,
100%. I would say that there's always opportunity, despite the fact that, like you said, every con is different. Some of them tend to be more exhibitor heavy. Some of them are more, celebrity heavy. Some of them are actually, I would find the more interesting ones are just heavy on like panels where you have like a little round table of people discussing things like, how to break into voice acting or like representation in various anime and media and things like that. Like, honestly, that's kind of what we do here. We just record it and stream it
yeah,
live. Um,
I know.
it would be very cool if we would just host an episode
So
of Midnight Hatter Live and the Gundam Explained show at a convention.
exactly. So we're throwing that out there. If anyone happens to be listening, for the four of you, if no, but because just that idea of we've talked about this before, even privately, like that in-person interaction is so valuable. As cool as it is, to talk online about this stuff, it would be cool that at a convention, and you know what, I did this with Blue Gamer way back,
Really?
in San Antonio. I think it was it might have not been the PAX. There was another gaming convention there, and it was through a local radio station that I would do the podcast through. And I was able to then get a booth, and then we did the podcast live there. Yeah, that was so cool. And so I love that because the in-person interaction is fun, especially like if it's in a group where you have like a panel. So then people can ask
Oh, yeah.
questions like, wouldn't an awesome panel we do be, what are the cool things about Universal Century Gundam? Like it's almost specific, but you could just go all day. Well, let's start with how grounded early 1 Year War is, and then you go on from there.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, absolutely. And I would love to just hear the groans that people have whenever, we bring up something like, oh man, Steven loves Witch from Mercury. Let me tell you about it. Like,
yeah, or saying how much you hate F91 because it is so funny. Not that you really hate it, but we joke. But it is so funny how often I do see people enjoy F91. Like it might be just not talked about a lot, but when it is,
you
it's
know,
usually
I think I've shared this theory before, but I have if we're going to call it something, like Newton's law or Occam's razor, you can call this like Stephen's law of Boba Fett inverse proportion popularity. Maybe
oh,
that's a mouthful.
but that's good.
But yeah, I call it the Boba Fett law of inverse popularity because what I've found is that the less exposure something has, the more hipsters will glom onto it and make it popular. You had the same, it's Boba Fett, it's the
Yeah.
camper from 0080. Everybody loves the camper. I'm like, this thing is ugly. It's got a tiny head. Get it out of my face.
Okay. Well, now you're crossing the line, but yeah.
But it's the same thing with
No.
like F91
Crossbone.
and Victory. What's that?
Crossbone. Pirate
Crossbone.
themed Gundams. That's the dumbest shit. I love it. No, it
Pirates and
is.
Gundam or monkeys in Zaku's. No, but no, I actually Crossbone I like. But yeah, I will never get over people that say Victory is like Zeta but better. I'm like, you're smoking crack.
I've never
And,
heard
and
anyone say that. I would like to meet them because I love Victory, but I don't think it's better than Zeta.
No, yeah, and I mean, even worse is I've seen people say that IBO is Zeta but better, and I'm like,
Wow, yeah, no,
clearly you're
I'm
just being
episode
competitive.
9. No, yeah, I'm episode 9 into IBO, and I haven't continued. I need to. Something is holding me back. I like it, but it's just not as compelling yet. So I need to jump in.
Fair. Well, since we've
Funny.
already lost half the audience with that hot take, I
No,
guess we can
we're just
start
getting
being honest.
started. No, actually though, speaking of IBO, here's something I got this week. I got my first Barbados merch.
Ooh,
Um, this is the Gundam Universe action figure. You can get these pretty cheap, and I think that's kind of why I've been picking up more. Again, it's like, yeah, I always talk about them. They're like Marvel Legends style, so it's only if there's something cool or neat. But I mean, sometimes you'll see them on clearance for 17.7, even on Amazon. It's like, I'll pick up. I gotta say, this Barbados Gundam Universe action figure is quite impressive. This is really the first time that I've kind of handled the proportions, the engineering of something like this. Because one thing with the Gundam Universe figures is they all share the same hands. So
right.
this is the first Gundam Universe figure that actually has different hands, and it's sculpted and painted nicely, and even the whole thing, it's you can look at it and say, "Oh, that's cheap looking plastic," but then you gotta hand it to the sculpt, the articulation. Um, these are pretty cool. It's in another cool thing about the Gundam Universe figures. This is a kind of a inexpensive way for me to kind of get my hands on non-UC suits that I normally wouldn't want to spend my time building or pay a premium for the Robot Spirits version. So by getting like a Gundam Universe figure, I can kind of appreciate the engineering, more of the robotics, because when you get the in hand, you can really see the design that the artist went into.
Yeah, you can
Putting this
start to
together.
appreciate a little bit more.
Yeah.
Um, for sure.
And then along with that is uh, I got the original release Unicorn Gundam Universe. I have the red one. This is the Awakening one, whatever.
Yeah.
And this is one of the ones that they're re-releasing. Um, and I could tell why, because with the knee, it barely.
It's not a good look.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so it. I don't know how much they redid certain ones in order to improve issues, or maybe they actually came up with a way to completely redo the line. But
And I would love to see them improve the finish on that because like with the unicorn in destroy mode, like, it's got the green paint, but it's not like could you put some like mica flakes in it, like make it
you
look
are
sparkly or something, or
100% on
I
that.
know that they can't do translucent parts, but like something to doll it
Yeah.
up a little bit.
Yeah, and you know what? I have the red one, and the red one doesn't look as bad, but 100% that is, I think, the main negative of these is the finish. As cool as they are, they do look a little cheap, and I have customized a few and they look better. The other thing too is I feel like this is actually good fodder for Gunpla. Sometimes if you
Probably,
just
yeah.
want to get different proportions for different things, maybe a different type of shoulder, and then you can easily repurpose it. Just because, like for instance, the back skirt just comes off easily, and it has thrusters, and
Is that
it's
a
like,
feature or
well,
a bug?
yeah, right. And actually, some of these come in the package like that to keep the box thinner. So at least they're keeping that in mind, I guess, sacrificing how it's packaged in order to keep the scaling sort of accurate. And then did I have any other point? No, I think that's it. I think if they could just get a good finish on these, but again, they're not super expensive.
No, and that's kind of the appeal, right? Is that it's
To
not a
be able to
robot
get,
spirit.
yeah, something, yeah, not Robot Spirits, but Marvel Legends, like, which makes sense. I mean, does your brother still collect Marvel Legends? Because I remember.
Yeah, he still customizes them too. I think uh, what was the one that he did recently? He swapped out a head on some figure, and then I think he's actually going to pick up the not John Wick, but it's like Berserker. It's the Keanu Reeves
Oh,
comic
I
book.
saw that.
And he wants to make a custom head for that. That's like the bloodied up. Um,
Oh, Keanu Reeves,
yeah,
like cut up and all that, or whatever. Yeah, yeah, that's
exactly.
cool.
Battle
Yeah,
damage Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, it I love that stuff. I love the action figure customizing. And what's really cool is, and this is interesting, kind of not Gundam related, but Hasbro was coming out with like a Marvel vs. Capcom collection, but there's no Capcom. It's just, and nowhere on it does it say Marvel vs. Capcom, just like video game backgrounds. But they're gonna have a whole new Wolverine that's sculpted to be more like the comic book version. How he's all hunched over, exaggerated things on the helmet or the mask, and then the effect parts of his like moves in Marvel vs. Capcom. So
now what they need to do is have like a little voice box on it that when you push it, it goes like drill claw, drill claw.
yes, all of his voice lines. You're right. I would think the voice line thing would actually be a legit thing you could sell and make it part of the stand.
You know, it's funny. Years ago, I bought action figures from Monty Python and its Holy Grail.
Oh, yeah.
They only sold 3 of them. It was Sir Robin, Sir Bedivere, and King Arthur himself. But they came with bases, and the bases had recorded voice lines from the movie. And that seems to be the way to do it. Is like,
Yeah,
you know, you don't
I
have
think
to
so.
complicate the figure or compromise the figure, I should say, with the electronics and stuff. You have the figure be a premium action figure, and then you just include a base that has some kind of gimmick to it.
Another thing too that I think they should be doing more, and Bandai could easily be doing this right now, is storage for accessories inside stands.
Yes.
That seems like such a simple thing. So, for instance, a lot of the Metal Robot Spirits or Verka, they come with these stands that are pretty hefty. But the bottom part has like, I don't know, half an inch or more to where they could easily just put a few little clips underneath just to stick like a beam saber effect part or
Yeah,
something.
definitely. I mean, that they can learn from Hasbro. Well, is it Hasbro or is it the third party Transformers? I'm pretty sure that Hasbro does a good job of this, but like the Transformers action figures, that they usually have some kind of storage for accessory parts
Oh yeah.
and a lot of that comes down to the fact that it's like, especially like with the combiners, what you'll find is like it's like they'll have a foot that is actually a gun. And so when it's in a foot mode, it looks kind of goofy because it's like, well, why does it have toes that look like cannons? But it's like, oh, because you turn it
Oh
upside down and it's a gun. It look, there are better ways to do it, but I'm just saying it can be done.
yeah. You know what? It's interesting because there's this interesting thing that happens, especially when these things become like a TV show or a toy or something, where there's this line where there's the creative and then there's the business. And it's funny with, how Transformers got here. It was so much to be a business that a lot of the creative part of it, I think, translated over super cheesy. Like I never got into Transformers, so I could be very alone on this. I've always thought they were kind of cool on the side, but like I couldn't take it seriously. I can't take that world seriously.
I don't blame you. I mean, it's I don't
Like,
know.
I feel like they could have. So what I'm trying to get at is, I feel like if there was more creatives behind the business decision, they probably could have came up with a more interesting story that would, kind of like how Star Wars is like kids can love it, but and not that it's for adults, but it's more geared toward
A
the
mature audience, yeah.
yeah,
Well, I mean, you enjoyed Transformers 1, that
right, which was a great example of that could have been anything
yeah.
because the story on its own was just so good. It could have been
Yeah, I
anything.
mean, I think it's funny because the classic, you know, Transformers G1 cartoon tackled so many interesting issues. I always bring this up is in literally the second episode of the cartoon,
Yeah.
the Decepticons, the bad guys, run a propaganda campaign talking about how the Autobots have come to Earth and are like trying to conquer the Earth. And it's like it's completely the opposite, right? But they're partnered with this businessman who's like, I'll get you all the energy you need. Like if you just help me achieve more in business, like you know, like he basically sold out humanity to the Decepticons in exchange for like profits.
That's funny. That is the main story of Transformers 1.
Wait, was it? Well, there weren't humans in Transformers 1, were there?
No, but
But
it
it is
was to their population on Cybertron. Like they didn't
right.
know they were living in an oppressed
a
And it was
society.
because the Transformers sold out, giving the energy to. Well, that's actually pretty interesting.
So I'm telling you, man, like don't sleep on the original series because like on it
Okay.
because it was funny because you know you look at the Michael Bay movies and it took them until the third movie to come up with the idea that a human would be like, no, I'm gonna side with these guys. Like what, you know?
Hmm.
Uh,
Well, yeah, you know what? It's funny because I remember watching Transformers when I was like super young. Not that I would remember any of the storylines or anything, but yeah, I quickly got out of that and I just had never watched an episode since. So I have no idea what kind of storytelling could be in
there's
there.
some interesting ones. I'm not gonna say that they're all winners for sure, but
Did you ever watch like the real Ghostbusters? That was the one I watched like crazy.
no, I missed it. My older brother was the Ghostbusters guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that and again, that's one I hadn't watched since I was a kid, so I don't know if they had interesting stories in there or not, you know? Um,
right.
it's
Uh,
interesting to think about that because that's always in my mind. How much of the show is written as the business decision? How much of it is written by a creative that's trying to say something or show something cool? Yes,
Yeah,
and
and how
that's something.
talented is that creative when it comes to sneaking a message in underneath the
Yeah,
business layer?
yeah.
And
That's
all credit to Tomino for doing so.
yeah, I know. Yeah, that's pretty cool stuff. So, another thing I got into this week because it's almost again talking about other media that alongside Gundam is, after playing the Battle Destiny remastered, I was playing on 3DS. Which, by the way, how much further have you gotten into Battle Destiny remastered? Have you?
Uh, I guess I'm pretty deep into the Zaft campaign.
Oh, okay.
But yeah,
Have you got to the point yet where you can choose different sides?
no, I haven't.
Oh, okay. Because I think there's maybe two or three, I forget what branching paths that you can go back and then redo and choose the other.
That's pretty cool. I noticed that there were some other missions and like that you don't like just off the bat you can go into these other missions and unlock suits and stuff. So I was like, well, I'm gonna do that because I'm
Yeah,
seeing
depending.
them again.
Yeah, so apparently it depending on what faction you start with, it change and what you decide to do changes the mission structure. Although
I love that.
all it really affects though, and I'm curious what you think, all it really does affect is what order you unlock mobile suits.
Yeah, that
Is
makes sense.
there would you say that that's even significant enough to make that a part of the game? Should they have done maybe a little more for branching paths?
I mean, I would like to see a little bit more. I think the ideal when it comes to branching paths in a video game is that you can't go back, right? Because then
Yeah.
that encourages replayability. Like you have to go and start over and take the other path.
Well,
If
yeah.
the only difference is that it changes the order in which you unlock things, then you know it kind
You
of
might get some more levels. So that
maybe yeah,
I wasn't really paying attention because you would just go to the next tab and then there's just new, and I'm just like,
pretty
okay, whatever.
much.
I'm just
That's kind of how I'm doing it. I'm like,
yeah. Um, okay. And then I was playing a little bit of the one on the 3DS, the
yeah,
UC one that's really cool. And then I was just getting that bug, and I was like, you know what? I want to play Front Mission Evolved again. And I saw that I remember talking about it here, and that was actually back in 2022,
wow.
where I had decided to reinstall it and play it. And I was like, oh yeah, this is really good. And so then I just dropped off. But after playing Armored Core, and that was 2023, I I was really curious to get back into Front Mission Evolved to beat it. That's the Front Mission series, but this is the third person action one. And and I also installed Armored Core to play alongside it. Armored Core is amazing graphics. It's super fast, but Front Mission Evolved is still a really good game. And when it came out, people were just giving it crap and it got bad reviews.
I was gonna say I remember it getting terrible reviews, and I couldn't tell how much of that was just
Mad because they're like, oh, look, there was that time period where reviews seem to have reviewers seemed to have this mindset of like, oh, this is just a cash grab. Oh, this is not made by the original developer. And I know sometimes I'll bring that stuff up, but it seemed like they would use that as an excuse when it wasn't valid. And
well, and
yeah,
at the end of the day, isn't everything a cash grab? Like
Well,
you
yeah,
can here's my elaboration on that
yeah,
is because yes, there are some things that you can tell are motivated by greed, but yes, every single video game, every single property, every single model kit, everything is a cash grab. Obviously, they're trying to make a profit on it. The question is, did they sacrifice the integrity of the property, of the franchise, of the IP in order to make that product to where
right.
cash grab is a true pejorative? Because the problem is, if you can't come up with another reason for why you don't like it, then it was a cash grab. Then to me, it just kind of sounds like, you
Yeah.
know, you're coming up with a reason to.
Yeah, and I would hear them say things like, "Oh, the level design is atrocious, the controls are bad," and it's like, yeah, I could say the level design could be better. Some levels are really, really cool. Like they have space elevator levels later in the game that are really awesome. Early ones are kind of bland, like you're in a city. Um, a- and but to me, I would even think coming from a turn-based strategy game that it would have a little bit more effort and resources to then make a third-person action game. I would think then there might have to be more thought about that because the idea was probably more to go in the line of like Gears of War, kind of how third-person action games were the thing.
Right.
Um, but playing it, I prefer the gameplay over Armored Core. Armored Core is like super fast and it's supposed to be trick shotty fast. Like
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I have my meta, I have this, I'm gonna go in, okay, I pull this off, and then I do this. Whereas when I'm playing Front Mission Evolved, it's still fast. You're skating around, but it's like where I'm fighting a boss that like it's almost like classic video game boss. Like a thing opens, it's the three red eyes. You got to shoot. Well, then it shoots lasers at you, but then you like jump over them, and depending on your thrust, you can like navigate jumping while shooting. And it like retains classic methodical, or you're taking your time playing, but also skating around, dodging missiles. Like this boss I was playing in Front Mission Evolved, I just loved how cool it was where he would have this one move where he start shooting missiles at me. So I would just be like skating around the room, like shooting the missiles because you can shoot them while shooting him. And then he would do this thing where he'd glow, jump on the ground, pull out his sword, and come at me. And I got this new upgrade where when I jump, I can hover. And so it's like I knew the perfect time to jump and hover so his sword wouldn't get me. And it's just,
That feels so good when you can execute those
yeah.
moves.
And it's because since it's not as fast as Armored Core, the execution is in choosing the different interesting moves you have instead of Armored Core being more. To me, it seemed the meta was the trick shots, like get these things, you can do then this. And I guess actually part of that too is the weapon attachments. And again, I haven't really paid much attention to the meta lately in Armored Core since maybe they patched it and all that, but there's those like, oh, just use these guns and you win.
Yeah, and I mean, it is kind of sad when a game can get reduced to that. As much as like I love the Earth Defense Force series,
Oh, yeah.
I remember just like, dude, just max out the homing missiles, and then you can literally just run around the map and like shoot missiles, and they'll fly behind you and kill ants and kill bugs, and like there's no reason to invest in any other weapon
Yeah.
because if you max out the homing missiles, like you don't even have to try.
You know what? Oh, wait, continue because I think you're going to have another point.
I don't think so. No, you're
No,
good.
okay. No, because that reminds me of when I'm playing Battle Destiny, because even when all my supers are turned on for the Strike Freedom, I enjoy doing the Strike Freedom combat. Like, I don't want to, I did that, to clear some missions I need to clear, but when I want to have fun going in and fighting. And Earth Defense Force is one of those games where it's fun to kind of do that.
Yeah. Um, but it's one of those things that I think we've talked about this before is if given the opportunity, players will optimize the fun right out of a game. They will like they'll identify what is the combo that's going to
Yeah.
win me with the least amount of effort. And it's like you're kind of like robbing yourself of the good time by doing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When I play RPGs, or it depends on the game, actually, when you can level up your stats or you can throw things into stuff, a lot of times I try to play where I don't want to have to throw into health.
Yeah.
Because if I'm relying on my health being high, then I'm not really that great. Or it's not that, it's just I haven't given myself time to learn the mechanics to avoid that. And so I like to use that as a barometer sometimes when I'm playing games and be like, yeah, don't upgrade health yet. I'm just gonna step back and um like do power,
Yeah.
or some strength, whatever.
I mean, mine is always like I dump everything into like speed, evasion. That's always been my thing. Like
Oh yeah.
I love speed. I love like dodging and
Yeah.
so like I don't mind being like a glass cannon when I'm playing different types of RPGs. But yeah, I mean, even I'm guilty of it as much as I love G Generation Eternal, because it's a mobile game, I'm like, well, I can just optimize my squad to the point where I can hit skip and just
Yeah.
rush
And
through everything.
sometimes I feel like that. So that's the other interesting cool thing about this game is where it could be grindy. It kind of allows you to skip depending on what it is. Like even today, I played just for a little bit. Well, when I say a little bit longer than I normally would play, but I
Yeah.
haven't played in a while. And it was the 0083 event, and so I just finished it all.
I guess it,
Um,
it goes by pretty quick, right?
yeah, it does, and I felt like I had everything I could do there. It was really fun to do. I went through and 3-starred all the, because I already have, and there were some things I didn't realize I hadn't done, like, oh, I could have maxed 3 of my ultra units to 100 or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I guess though you can max them more if you have another of that unit to
Yeah, exactly. Then you can
limit
like
break.
limit break them,
Okay, yeah.
and that adds 20, 40, and then 60% on top of whatever they're. So like for instance, my fully maxed out Zeta Gundam, which is the one that like you get in the development tree, is actually better than all of my EX units, like on paper.
Oh, EX. Okay.
The only
Wait.
thing about the oh god.
Well, no, I was going to ask. So, do you think I could do that with the RX-78 too? If I
Yeah.
just wanted a badass RX-78 because there's not I don't have an EX one. I just have the SR or something.
Yeah, the only thing I would do is use your SP chips to
Yeah.
unlock it so that it goes to level 100 instead of level 90. Yeah, do your 3 limit breaks and then max it out to level 100 and
Because there's that whole thing where it's like, well, since this is an EX, I'm just going to use this one, and
yeah.
then but I want to get out of that because I want an RX-78 too. That's like yeah.
Yeah, that's where I've gotten to where I'm like I find myself using not the EX units. So like my squad right now consists of the Zeta, a Bawu, Quinn Mantha, the Red Zeta, which technically I guess it's the ultimate unlockable when you finish the development tree for Zeta,
Yeah.
and Psycho Gundam. And so like what's cool is the Psycho Gundam and the Quinn Mantha, like they're just like tanks. And because the Zeta is so like has 0 HP, having the Quinn Mantha there to absorb that first attack always kind of protects it so that it can do its thing.
Wow. So really spending your time upgrading then other strength ranked units is just as good as using the EX.
Oh yeah.
I
Dude,
need to really get this in my head. Yeah.
like I said, man, I used the SP chips to unlock like level 100 on the Gundam Mark II, which that's like I think it's like a rare or maybe a common unit. That is such a like defense monster because it has 2 shields, so it can block 2 attacks per turn. And it's so tanky that it can take hits from like the only thing that was able to destroy it was the GPO2 with the atomic bazooka.
Wow. Oh, that's cool. I need to remember this next time I log in to be like, hey, let me start throwing. And would you recommend I don't necessarily have to be upgrading all the units? I can throw some low end ones to level up on their own alongside high end ones.
Yeah, for sure. What I kind of started doing, especially for series that I don't like, is like, obviously I didn't throw very many resources towards G Gundam. And so what I'll do is I've got my team that like does all the damage, and I'll take Domon and like all of my G Gundam units and basically move them away from the fight and
Okay. And let them. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, no, it's cool. Again, it is. I think it's these blessings. Having a baby then allows you to have another blessing, which is play Eternal more than you expected. Because hearing that from you, I really feel like this is a win for Bandai.
Yeah. Now
Them,
the next step, and so I don't. Do you have the Bandai TCG app?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I started building my deck for the Gundam card game.
Oh, do they let you do that in it? I didn't.
Yeah, they have like the
Oh.
full card library in there, so you can like there's a deck builder that you can start putting stuff together. So, it looks like my deck is going to be a green-white combo, with some, yes,
And
some
you were looking
Xeon.
at like the cross stats or whatever to kind of build for them to work off each other. That's fun.
Yeah,
Okay, you know what's interesting? The GameStop near me. I have a GameStop that I've lived in this, same area my whole life, and there's this GameStop I remember when they first opened it. I wished my whole life, man, I hope they open a GameStop near me one day.
and now you never
And
go.
and yeah, and they did as that and Taco Bell right next to each other as soon as I graduated high school, which was okay because I was in the area,
Yeah,
even though I wasn't up here. Anyway, for years that GameStop would do different things, like it owned the store next to it and they knocked out the wall. At first it was like the cell phone business. Like I think his GameStop had the side cell phone business. And then
yeah,
for a while it was the Think Geek, where it was all the Funko Pops and they
yeah.
still do that, and like gadgets and stuff. They've and then in recent time it's been a lot of yeah, again, just like memorabilia, but now it's all in on Pokemon cards. Like they now have tables set up and a TV
Nice.
to go in and play card games. And I'm like, that's actually I guess a smart idea for GameStop. Since it's a physical location, you might as well offer some sort of incentive of being in a place other than your home to experience something you can at home, because you'd be playing video games at home anyway.
True.
So and then Pokemon's video game related, and so having the card. But then it just made me think, could this be a way to play some Gundam card games there? I don't know.
Yeah.
Because the other thing too is I always try to remember it was at a GameStop, and that GameStop that I bought the real grade Unicorn Gundam, and it got me into this whole thing. And I was checking what stock they had, and I'm starting to think like it's a good idea at first, but then I think, wait a minute, this is a mistake. They had the ARC 78-2 high grade, they had the Red Zaku high grade, and then they had
Naturally.
the Wing high grade. And it's like, I feel like if you're trying to attract Gundam fans in this area, they probably already have these. They need to, especially GameStop. Now Target, maybe that's a little different, but especially GameStop, they need to do like they used to do, where I remember I would go to GameStops when I first got into Gunpla, because other than a Hobby Town, those were the only places that had them, and they would have ones.
Decent selection. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So that,
even got the narrative B packs
wow.
high grade there. Yeah.
So, that's a good question. It's like, all right, do you think that they are carrying like these very, how do you even describe it? Like easy to find, like generic mobile suits. Do you think that they're carrying them specifically to attract new people to Gundam, or do you think it's to get Gundam fans in the door? Because the way I'm thinking about it, if I'm a Gundam fan, I wouldn't be going to Gunstop.
Well, that's a
That's
good
a different
idea.
store.
That's a good idea.
But I
Well,
wouldn't be
actually,
going.
yeah, that could be a different story.
It's probably hard, yeah, especially
Yeah.
in Texas.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't be going to GameStop for Gunpla, at least off the top of my head. To me, I would almost try to put whatever's the coolest looking Gunpla that maybe doesn't even have fan appeal, specifically to target gamers that are not Gundam fans.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's just me. Maybe my
No,
my business acumen is not exactly.
I
I don't
think
own GameStop.
no, no one should. Obviously, we see all that weird stuff that happens, but no, I think that is a good question in general, because considering they used to carry a bunch of different interesting. In fact, I remember that's where, if I'm not mistaken, that's where I got the real grade high new. I remember I would pre-order and get my Gunpla at GameStop.
Yeah.
and they stopped doing that. It's interesting. I don't know how much that's GameStop or Bandai, to be honest.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
But
Because
okay.
oh, go ahead.
No, I'm going to change subject, but finish
Please
your
do.
thought.
Yeah.
Oh, please do. Okay. No, this is the other topic that you and I started before we were streaming, and then we were like, "Oh yeah, let's wait." So
Yeah, we should say that.
yeah, because we were talking about like the length of G-Quux. We talked on your show yesterday, so if people want to get more into like what we thought about that last episode, check that. We might talk about a little bit of that here. And then, there was that thought about it's like 12 episodes, and it's like, is that enough? And some people complain, I don't think that's enough. We need, and then, I was thinking back to things like, like actually you brought it up, like 08 MS Team, Stardust Memory, and then I was thinking War in the Pocket. These are like fan favorite Gundam shows that are
Little
not long.
OVAs.
Yeah.
Little OVAs.
OVAs. Yeah, that's the term. Yeah. And then also we were talking about Witch from Mercury, because like how there is something about it, but there is something wrong, and that is, I think, the juxtaposition of the war in which the world is in, and this school, this college campus of life that I was intrigued by. I did not think I would care.
Yeah.
You know what? Okay, here's another thing I want to bring up to you. That Witch from Mercury was the first Gundam show that I was watching live after getting into Gundam.
True.
So what was really interesting to me was it being so heavy in the characters at the beginning going to school was almost like, oh, wow, this is my first time into a Gundam world live with everyone else in the world. But like, I really enjoyed, that's why I got the model kits of Soletta Morine. That's not like a thing I'm normally into, but if they did, you brought up, if they did that Witch from Mercury, like we saw, and then you brought up Unicorn because of the school at the beginning.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, so to bring this full circle, I guess
Yeah.
one of the things that we talked about before the show was, and I'm going to keep harping on it, is like, does G-Quux need to be set in UC in order to be appealing? And the conclusion that I've arrived at, with the help of some friends, so, shout out to, you guys know who you are, who have talked to me about G-Quux, is that it really seems like the Studio Kara guys wanted to do a UC thing. They wanted to have a bunch of nostalgia and callbacks and make a UC story, but the higher ups said, no, we want something original. And so they kind of like Machu, Shuji, and Neon, they are like they're like a sideshow. They are not the main focus. They are just there because they had to be there in order to get the thing greenlit. But really what they're interested in is doing all this UC stuff. And so it got me thinking about, like, Witch from Mercury, IBO, all of these other AUs where, could Witch from Mercury have been a UC side story similar to something like an 8th MS Team or a 0083, where it has nothing to do with Char and Amuro, but it's like its own isolated pocket story within UC. And like you said, they have the school that Benager and everybody was at. What was the school called? It was like
I forget. Federation School in Space.
Yeah, the engineering school that they were at. It wasn't Palau, but something like that. But yeah, Ostacasia, the school from Witch from Mercury, could very well have been a school in the Universal Century, and like far removed from like the Xeon Federation conflict, they could have that story set there. And then it's like you get the best of both worlds, right? Because you get the UC story, but it's a side story. And so it doesn't, it's like, oh, don't mess with my legacy characters. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I like what you're saying, because really I would love a Universal Century story that is more akin to the first part of what Witch from Mercury was doing, where it's a day in the life. Like there's that, anime is really hit or miss for me, to be honest. And
sure.
I feel like part of getting into it, there's getting into a vibe. I think Japanese anime is really good at being a vibe thing, and you got to be in that vibe. There was that show called High Score Girl on Netflix. That's an anime, and I loved it. And that was all vibe, but it was 90s arcade vibe. That's what helped me get into it. but it was the guy that liked this girl. But it was also that kind of day in the life, because it was like what it was like at home with video games, then what it was like wanting to play video games while then meeting people and then meeting a girl that plays video games. So it was like this really cool story that was a vibe I vibed with, that I was following. And it made me think I would love that for Gundam more. Kukuru's Doan's Island almost does it very little by meeting the
Yeah.
inhabitants of the island.
Yeah, and that's something you and I talk about a lot when it comes to earlier Gundam series, like the original or Zeta, where you get these moments where you get a glimpse into what it might be like to live in this time,
Mhm.
live in this era. You have like the guy that has the coffee farm on Earth that's talking to Amuro about, oh, well, we had to flee to space, and like when I get home, I'm not leaving Earth ever again. I don't care what the Zeons tell me, like I'm staying put. I'm going to show my grandchildren how to brew coffee. And I love that there is like a callback to that in Unicorn, where Mineva
Oh,
is at the bar
the
where that guy
cafe.
serves her a cup of coffee, and it's like, is that like the son of the guy that,
That's
like,
pretty
is it the
good.
boy who Amuro fixed the car for? Because remember, the whole thing is like it's the grandfather saying, "Oh, thank you, son, for fixing my grandson's toy car."
Yeah, that's
And
we'll have to look into that more. That's pretty good. It That's sort of another thing with Double Zeta Gundam. I bet if you took the first episode of Double Zeta Gundam and made sure it didn't have that goofy jazz, it would change the tone, because the very beginning is them risking their lives in space to pick up trash that they can sell. And they're just trying to pay for stuff because right now their parents are in another colony making money. And then they meet this shady dude, and they know he's shady, but hey, they want to make some money with him, and they're willing to do shady things until they start shooting. And then that's when Judo or Camille through Judo's like, no, no, no. But if they didn't have that goofy like with the jazz and solo, what the like if they didn't have that music and it was more like ominous, dark music, that tone that people, I almost wonder if that's what happened. If Double Zeta almost came off too dark at the beginning, and then they had to throw it because everything is dark.
I mean, even from a visual aspect of it, like Double Zeta, the animation is some of the grittier style animation, like of all Gundam series.
Yeah,
Like between
I
that and 0083, you have this early 90s animation style. Yes, I know Double Zeta was before the 90s, but it's that animation style that's like very sketchy, and it's like got
yeah.
lots of mechanical detail. There's a lot of dirt and grime all over everything. And
Inconsistent lines that kind of make it look more organic. Yeah.
exactly. And so yeah, I think that you're onto something there, because it's a kind of ugly look at what life might be like for people that aren't in the military.
Yeah, exactly. Like that. And they're talking about all the Federation ship just showed up, there people talking about that, and just all those little elements. I feel like again, they should release Double Zeta as a movie trilogy, dub, change some of the music. Use the music from the same guy. I can't, his name starts with an S, and I think that's the name of a character in Double Zeta. Now that I'm thinking about
Sagusa,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
He's
Okay.
one of the co-pilots on the
Yeah.
Argona. Sagusa,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
Isn't
That
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 funny?
just
I,
that
I I
is.
love when they do that kind of stuff where they like kind of homage one of the
Yeah, a
yeah,
creator is part of it, but he has plenty of themes that they could use that are much darker that could be in the place of a lot of the Double Zeta stuff. But I mean, the reason I've gotten to a lot of this recently is because someone had left a comment about um, the Double Zeta Gundam itself and its impact in future Gundam. Just made me think about Double Zeta as a whole, like the story. Like if someone happens to bring up the Double Zeta Gundam, it's like, well, what about the story? What about the anime? Wasn't it good? And so this video is more of like, here's actually legit things that really that happened in Double Zeta that make it worth the watch. But I
100%.
do want to revisit the idea of what if I rescored some of those scenes in Double Zeta. I would love to see if we could like give it a better or not that it would be better, but more of what that UC fan was expecting.
Well, have you seen like, there's that whole genre of YouTube video where people will recut the trailer of a movie as a different genre movie. The hands
Oh,
down the best one is Miss Doubtfire, where they recut the trailer of Mrs. Doubtfire as a horror film.
oh,
And it's like a lot of snappy cuts and like gong sounds, and just stuff like,
I
oh,
gotta.
people will do crazy things to see their children. Gung, gung. Like just stuff like that.
Dude.
You did that with Double Zeta.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
I'll be thinking about it because I think it deserves its fair shake. But
It does.
another element we were talking about, I want to talk about the 50 episode
Just
show.
the length. Yeah.
Yeah, which I always say 50, but then some end at 42, but the thing is, whenever I've finished one of these shows that are that long, and here's the thing, I don't think I've ever watched a series that was that long until Gundam. You know what I mean? Like it's like I never went back and watched Dragon Ball or any old cartoons or shows. Even Batman the Animated Series, sometimes I'd watch, a couple episodes, but I never sat through. But I would sit through Gundam, and that sometimes would take a few months for one of the series, but felt like I went on a journey. And I remember that as like that was a trip I was on.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I spent my time with it, and I didn't just, rush through it. But and it's the same thing with Super Dimensional Fortress Macross. It's about 40 whatever episodes. I like that, but how much of that was a product of its time? How much of it is the cost versus the technology they're using? And is it where, well, the technology that makes things seem they look good are not necessarily efficient, or is technology so efficient that then they just don't want to pay more to do more? I don't know.
There's definitely something you're onto something there because there was an art to older animation, and I feel like people tend to write off older animation as like, oh, well, that was cheap and it looks schlocky, like it's not good. And modern animation, they have so many advanced techniques and stuff. But I would say that they're also under the gun as far as profit motives go. One of the things that I've been noticing a lot is people going back and looking at like even old Disney animation, and they're like, wow, this stuff was stunning. Like it looked so good. This hand-drawn animation. The perfect example somebody brought up from that Robin Hood cartoon. I don't know if you ever saw it, where Robin Hood is a fox and like
Yep.
Little John's a bear. There was a scene where the king's snake, like he's got that henchman that's a snake, and the snake like folds his arms and like gets all mopey, and it's like, dude, it's a snake, he doesn't have arms, but they animated him folding his arms as if he's got an attitude. Like, do you understand how insanely like you don't see stuff like that in modern animation at all? Like,
No.
so when you talk about things like, oh, well, they could redo 0079 in the style of like the Origin, or they could just update the animation, it's like I almost don't want them to, because they're going to miss out on so many of the nuances and the interesting things that were done in the old animation. Like, I understand, yes, it's a little blurry, stuff like that, there's going to be goofy proportions from time to time, but like sometimes the goofy proportions are better.
Yeah, especially if it's adding more of that the historical context of manga being what came anime, the comic booky look, that whole exaggerated look.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It's a
But yeah,
fine line to tread.
I want in I don't know when the last time it happened and how long it goes, but like if you have a 40 something episode season, is that one episode a week for the whole year or something like that? Because that's pretty cool.
I guess that would make sense, like a 52 weeks, with a couple of breaks, like for holidays, things like that. Because they always had like a hiatus that would come at some point.
Yeah.
Usually it would be the mid-season break, right, where you could
But see, I don't think I ever really paid attention to how long any show's seasons were. Because I think I was the type where, yeah, even when I was in high school or got out of high school, I never sought to watch old shows or other shows. I was always playing video games. So it's
Yeah.
interesting how this concept is newer to me, because I think it would be badass if there was a year of there's this new Gundam show and you're gonna pretty much get an episode every week, nearly, for like a year. Like
Yeah.
that's awesome. Um,
And you know what I've noticed is that it allows you to really really take things in and kind of form the long-term memories, because
yep,
you and I were just talking about like when we're watching Geekwux, like we watch an episode and then immediately forget everything that we just saw. Like,
yep.
and that seems to be like a modern phenomenon where like I remember like everything down to the taste of the Diet Coke and tomato soup that I was eating when I was watching, the episode of Gundam Wing when Wu Fei destroys the Victoria base turret. Like there's so many like tangible sensory informations that's tied into that memory of watching that episode because I had to wait a week for it to come out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude, I know what you mean, and that's setting intention too, which is a
Yeah.
big deal when it comes to how you should move through your reality. It's really good to set intentions.
A lot of
Um,
people do that when they listen to music, right? As opposed to just like clicking go on Spotify. It's like, no, I'm gonna pick out a record from this crate. I'm gonna put it
yeah,
on my 45. I'm gonna like do the thing. And it's like I'm going to intentionally listen to this music.
that's
It's
exactly
such
it.
a different experience than when you're just like, all right, hit playlist and go.
Yeah, I feel it's like that even with video games with me. Sometimes it's like if I'm getting a game I'm not feeling, it's like okay, maybe I need to reframe. And I think I've brought this up before. I think that's what helped me get into Gundam and enjoy the first Gundam was me getting into meditation and learning to kind of remove judgments of things. That hey, I can watch an old cartoon and not care.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I've noticed that there's a lot of attitudes going around on Gundam Twitter right now that I'm like, some people just don't even watch the shows. Like they're like, oh well, I might make a video about this. Is this like Cliff Notes mentality where it becomes the most uninteresting way to consume media, and I hate using the term consume media. But like you think about the books that we were supposed to read in high school, and I say supposed to read because I know you didn't read them, I didn't read them.
nope.
No, we read the Cliff's Notes, right? Hey, what am I supposed to get out of Hamlet, right? And so everyone arrives at the exact same conclusions of what you're supposed to get out of Hamlet because we all read the same summaries, the same like
Oh,
thematic analysis and breakdowns. And so
good
when
point.
everybody on Twitter is like, I'm not going to watch 0079. Like, I got the story from playing G Generation, or I got the story from playing Journey to Jabra. Like, I don't have to watch it. Like, I got the summary, I read the wiki, whatever. They skip through all of it. And then they arrive at the same boring, trite conclusions as everybody else. Everybody is saying the same things. It's such a reductive and lame way to enjoy something. Like, do you really want that to be how you enjoy the media that you claim to love? Or do you want to like go all in on it, watch it beginning to end, two or three times just so that you can get everything you can out of it, and then you can start to draw your own conclusions instead of just being the same like, oh, war is hell and like child soldiers kill them all, Tamino. Like,
Right. Yeah,
it's
the
so
same
boring.
things. Yeah, you bring up so many valid things because there's a lot of times where I want to talk about something, related to Gundam, and maybe I'll get a comment or something that's like, yeah, bringing up the thing we all know we've heard like 50 times, and it's like, yeah, okay, now, I guess this isn't getting as deep as I wanted to. That's okay. It's still there for, and yeah, I wonder too how much could this be a symptom of people that are seeking groups that they feel maybe that they're able to pick up on those cliff notes quickly? It allows them to feel like they're included, because there are times, again, and I brought this up with like F91 Victory, or even what people would say about Double Zeta Gundam when I first got into it.
Yeah,
I'm glad I was able to form my opinion and be like, wait, no, no, no. This is actually cool, and I wonder how many times too. And I think originally with Seed I did this. I did hear people crap on Seed,
of course. Yeah.
but I get it. But it's still, it was for me. I was like, oh, it must be bad or something. Or even though
Well,
it's
and
not.
it goes both ways, right? Because like, I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh man, I can't wait for Adam to get to Wing. It's gonna be so awesome. He's gonna love it. We're gonna be best friends for the rest of time because he's gonna watch Wing and he's gonna be like, dude, yes. And then he's like, I kind of hate it.
But what is so funny is it kind of goes back to the experience, the journey, because I didn't just rush through it. So like I think back to the memories, the time, the tangibility that you were talking about, like, and then I have the nostalgia, and then I'm like, you know what? And it's interesting. I wonder, sometimes we feel like we have nostalgia for something because we think, oh, it might not be that good, but we have nostalgia for it. But
Sure.
what if nostalgia is the wrong word? What if there are things that, and I think this kind of goes to schlock, where it's, even if it's not that great, it did things, a mix of things in a way that kind of stays in your mind and maybe takes you to a happy place without realizing it does, like a warm place,
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's funny you bring this up because I just watched it was just like a Instagram reel or something talking about the movie Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh,
John Carpenter, Kurt Russell,
yeah,
like how could it not be fantastic, right? Like,
yeah.
but at the time that it came out, I think it was competing against like Aliens, and
Oh,
I mean, it was just the worst possible time for a movie like that to come out. And then, of course, like the marketing guys, they didn't really know how to pitch it because it was like,
yeah,
it's a comedy that has like Western vibes, and it's about this trucker that's like fighting a Chinese sorcerer. Like this, what do you want? Like, what is it? What is this?
yeah.
And what's fascinating is like, of course, it bombed in the box office, but it has this cult following because of what it was doing, like what it was able to do. So
Yeah, that's a good thought because I watched that movie so much when I was a kid,
yeah,
just because it was like, oh, I can't wait to see when this happens, and then this, and then that time when the girl gets the makeup on for some reason, and then the guy shooting lightning, and none of it cohesively made sense to me, but I enjoyed those, and that's interesting because I think it kind of goes to Wing, Seed. When I go and think back, I'm like, oh, there's some warm memories and some moments.
right. Oh, he's about to tear the invitation. He's gonna do it.
No, but I wonder if that works in other ways where there could be something that, and I'm sure there is, but I wonder if there's examples where you look back and be like, I'm not gonna watch that again.
I
Because even
mean,
Seed, I didn't mind jumping back into that, and because it has the badass music and mobile suit fights, so I can.
yeah, I mean, I find myself like sometimes I'll just listen to the Seed intros and outro music
Oh,
because I'm like, dude,
yeah, to
they're
get the
awesome.
vibe.
They're so good.
Yeah, to get the vibe without looking at the noses or lack thereof. You know what, dude? You know what it reminded me of today? And I know we're getting to the end, and I'm always talking about the nose situation, me and the noses. I forgot what I was watching today. I think it was some sort of animation, but not like anime animation. It was something where something was supposed to be a skeleton or like a demonic skeleton, but so the nose was just a cavity that was just like a line, an
Oh
empty
yeah.
line, empty cavity. So I'm like, growing up watching all the Evil Dead zombie stuff, I think I'm correlating the noses in Seed to like those empty slit cavities in zombies and skeletons. And so when I see that, I'm like, oh my God, why am I looking at? No, it's it's one of those things, like the human survival instinct is when they can look at a face and be like, okay, that is a human. No, when I look at, if Kira was in real life and I ran into him, I would be running, screaming, being like, this isn't human. It's going to eat us. I don't know. I mean, he would stab me with a headbutt. I mean,
Yeah, probably so.
I don't know. I guess it's an interesting way to end this episode.
Yeah. Don't cut your nose off to spite your face is the
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I guess anything else, Stephen? Anything else to add? Or is that about it?
No, this has been a fun. Thank you for letting me vent because I
Oh,
feel like I've
sure.
been shouting a lot this episode.
Oh no, yeah. You know what? I like some of these when we start. We're in the green room, if we can call it that, and we're like, there's not too many big things going on Gundam wise to talk about. And we talked about G-Quirks yesterday, but it's cool that we can sit around with chat and just come up with stuff.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about this franchise, about this thing that you and I have built our lives around, is that really there's no shortage of topics to discuss when it comes to even
That
just
is true.
UC Gundam.
Yeah, that's true. So in that case, we'll be back next week to talk even more about Gundam. So yeah, make sure you join Steven's show Wednesday, mine Thursday, or just check out our shows afterwards. But I guess that's it, Steven. Thanks a lot, all. We'll see y'all next time. Have a good one.
Cheers.